So we move to the next topic, that is denial or upholding of the principles of natural justice. Now the reason why I use denial or upholding is that any of the rights of principle of natural justice is conferred on an individual. If the exercise of the rights by the individual is against public interest, then such a denial of the principles of natural justice will actually uphold the principles of natural justice in favor of the larger public interest. So, proceeding further, we are taking one of the examples of services under the union or the state. So, this topic will be combined for both administrative law and constitutional law. We shall refer to Article 309 of the Constitution, which says that the recruitment and conditions of the service of the members of union or state services can be regulated by an appropriate legislature. Appropriate legislature. So you have to see the lists under whose jurisdiction the services come, whether it comes under the central government or the state government. Other important thing is to see is that 309 is subject to the provisions of the constitution. What does it mean when it says it is subject to the provisions of the constitution? For example, if a member of the civil services takes part in a strike or a dharna, and a law provides that if any member of the civil services takes part in a strike or a dharna, he will be removed from the services. Now, since 309 says that legislature can make a law, but it is subject to the provisions of the constitution, it means the provisions of the constitution which lays down the fundamental rights are also regulating the article 309. So, if there is a right of freedom of speech and expression under the activities of strike or dharna, then such a law will be held to be invalid. Secondly, Article 310. This is known as the provision of the pleasure of the President. So, any member of the civil services or of the armed forces are having their tenure of services under the pleasure of the President. So, if the President deems fit that such a services may be terminated, then the President is under the authority to terminate those services. And then further, it also provides 310 also provides grounds for compensation if those services are terminated. But the important part is it says except as expressly provided in the constitution. So there will be certain services whose tenure is decided by some other provision of the constitution. So 310 will not be applying to those provisions of the constitution. For example, the tenure of the judges of the Supreme Court or the High Court, the Comptroller Auditor General of India, and also the Chief Election Commissioner and the Regional Commissioners. For example, 324 regulates the tenure of the service of CEC and Regional Election Commissioners. So 310 will not be applicable in those cases. Further, Article 311, it is also expressly provided by the Constitution. Now, therefore, if there is a pleasure of the President to remove a person from the services, then this pleasure of the President is having an exception, which says that there are certain safeguards which are available to the civil servants, only civil servants and not armed forces. So 311 is made for civil servants. So if there is a provision, Article 310, which says it is the pleasure of the President to decide the tenure of the service of the members of civil services or the armed forces, and 311 lays down certain safeguards in favor of the civil servants, then 311 is said to be an exception to the Article 310. Now the safeguards which are provided are important and has been discussed in detail in the case of Tulsiram Patel, which is given in your constitutional law case material. So let us see what are the safeguards provided under Article 311. Remember that Article 311 will be acting as an exception to Article 310 but not to Article 309. 309 is subject to 310 and is also subject to 311. So coming to 309, please remember that 309 is subject to the provisions of this constitution. Remember the words appropriate legislature of the union and of the state. Further, Article 310 starts with except as expressly provided by the Constitution. So, every person who is a member of a defense service or of a civil service holds any post during the pleasure of the president or the governor for the purposes of the state. 311 says that no person who is a member of the civil service, so it is only for the civil services, shall be dismissed or removed by an authority subordinate to that by which he was appointed. So, this is the very first safeguard which is provided, that the removing authority shall be the superior authority by which that civil servant was appointed. Safeguard number 2: no such person shall be dismissed or removed or reduced in rank except after an inquiry which he has been informed of the charges against him and given a reasonable opportunity of being heard in respect of those charges. Therefore, this is the stage of the inquiry after which the guilt of the accused is finalized. So, at the stage of the inquiry, he has to be informed of the charges and he should be given a reasonable opportunity of being heard against those charges. It is further provided, now this is the amendment to 311 clause 2, that's after the inquiry, if it is proposed to impose penalty upon the civil servant, such penalty may be imposed on the basis of the evidence adduced during such inquiry, and it shall not be necessary to give such a person any opportunity of making representation on the penalty proposed. Therefore, we can say at the first stage of inquiry, he is being given a reasonable opportunity of being heard, but on the later stage, when the guilt of the accused has been proved and the penalty is going to be decided, such a person is not given any opportunity to make representation on the penalty which is proposed. Then the safeguard is with a proviso, and the proviso is divided into three main parts. The first part is this clause will not apply. So, clause 2 will not apply in cases where a person is dismissed or removed or reduced in rank on the ground of conduct which has led to his conviction on a criminal charge. So, if the person is dismissed, removed, or reduced in rank on the basis of a criminal charge, then this clause does not apply. Secondly, where the authority empowered to dismiss or remove a person or to reduce him in rank is satisfied that for some reason to be recorded by that authority in writing, it is not reasonably practicable to hold such an inquiry. So, this ground excludes the inquiry stage because it is reasonably not practicable according to the authority which is empowered to dismiss, remove, or reduce the rank of the civil servant. Third, where the president or the governor, as the case may be, is satisfied that in the interest of the security of the state, it is not expedient to hold such an inquiry. So, here the word is authority, and in subclause C, the word is governor or the president. Second difference, that it is not reasonably practicable, is the word used in subclause B, and it is not expedient is the word used in subclause C. Now, what is the difference between the two? We'll come to know in the case of Tulsiram Patel. Finally, in clause 3, it says whether it is reasonably practicable or not, it is the decision of the authority which is empowered to dismiss, remove, or reduce the rank of the servant, and that decision shall be final. So, what is this finality? We'll also come to know in the Tulsiram Patel case. So the important thing to be remembered is that there are certain safeguards mentioned under Article 311. One of the safeguard is that the removing authority shall not be a subordinate authority. Number two, there has to be a reasonable opportunity of being heard when an inquiry is conducted in respect of charges against the civil servant. There is an embargo which is created by the 42nd Amendment Act, which denies the opportunity of making representation on the penalty which is being proposed. Further, there are other grounds under which the subclause 2 will not apply. So, he will not be given a reasonable opportunity of hearing when he has been convicted on a criminal charge. Further, that there will be no requirement of an inquiry to be held if it is reasonably not practicable to hold such an inquiry, or such an inquiry will not be held if, according to the satisfaction of the president of the governor, that it is not expedient to hold such an inquiry. Further, that whether it is reasonably practicable to hold the inquiry or not is the decision of the authority, and its decision shall be final. So 311 is a safeguard provided to civil servant. So what are the safeguards provided to armed forces, members of armed forces? So that will be discussed in the case of SN Mukherjee, which is given in your administrative law case. Now it is important to discuss what is the actual purpose of the principle of natural justice. Now I have decided this purpose into two parts. One is the strictly legal purpose and second is the salutary purpose. For example, if the administrative authority decides against the member of the armed forces in respect of certain charges and there is a ground for appeal or review of that particular decision, then the purpose of the principle of natural justice is to facilitate the appellate authority or the reviewing authority. For example, if it is said that the decision of the administrative authority shall be a reasoned decision, then that reason will become a subject of review or appeal by these two authorities. But in the case of armed forces, certain articles are very important to be referred to. For example, Article 33 of the Constitution, which says that the Parliament may modify the fundamental rights of the armed forces. 136 and 227, they have specific provisions which excludes the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and the superintendent's jurisdiction of the High Court under 227. Now, if the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court is removed and the superintendence of the High Court is also removed, then the legal ground of the availability of the purpose of principle of natural justice becomes weak. However, the salutary purpose, for example, the purpose that if you follow the principle of natural justice, then it will lead to good governance and it will also lead to the fair exercise by the administration and then will develop faith in the administrative systems. Therefore, the question now is when that salutary purpose will be available to the persons who are aggrieved by non application of the principles of natural justice. For example, if the members of the armed forces are not having the right of appealing against the decision of the tribunal or under Article 227 of the Constitution for approaching the High Court, if these two grounds are not available, still the ground which is available is Article 32 and 226 for if a decision infringes the fundamental rights of the members of the armed forces or there is a jurisdictional error which can be cured by the High Court under 226, it can be admitted under this power of judicial review. However, this salutary purpose will be subject to the statutory provisions of those laws which are regulating the conditions of service of the armed forces. For example, the Army Act of 1950. If under the Army Act of 1950 it is expressly stated that a reasoned decision is not necessary, or it can be implied by necessary implication, then such a denial of principle of natural justice will overshadow the salutary purpose of the application of principles of natural justice. And this is held in the case of S.N. Mukherjee. So let us see what has been said in the case of S.N. Mukherjee, and then we will discuss the Tulsiram Patel and the ECIL case. So this case pertains to members of the armed forces and the decisions of the court martial. So the important thing is to be remembered, which is to be remembered is the requirement of passing a reasoned order. In this case, the question was, is there any general principle of law which requires an administrative authority to record reasons for its decision? Second, if so, does the said principle apply to an order confirming the findings and sentence of a court martial and post confirmation proceedings under the Act? So, the first part is to find whether there is a principle of law which says that the authority has to record reasons for its decision and whether that particular law is applicable under the Army Act. For this purpose, they initially refer to the case of Somdutt versus Union of India. Now, in this case, it was contended, remember, it was a contention, that since no reason had been given in support of the order, and that the central government has also not given any reason while dismissing the appeal of the petitioner, in that case, under section 165 of the Act, that order of the central government was also illegal. So, this is the contention. But this contention was held to be wrong. The court said, after referring to the provisions contained in section 164, 165, and 162 of the Act, this court pointed out that while section 162 of the Act expressly provides that Chief of Army Staff may, for reasons based on the merit of the case, set aside the proceeding or reduce the sentence to any other sentence which the court might have passed, there is no express obligation imposed by section 164 and 165 of the Act on the confirming authority or upon the central government to give reasons in support of the decision to confirm the proceedings of the court martial. So, if there is a decision by the court martial and the central government confirms the decision of the court martial, there is no express provision requiring giving of reasons for such a decision. But if the decision of the court martial is then set aside or the sentence is reduced, then there is a provision for recording of the reasons on the basis of merit of the case. Further, on the topic of which principle of law requires recording of reasons, it refers to the laws in United States and England. So in United States, it says that the issue of recording of reasons is relevant because administrative process will be vindicated by clarity in its exercise. So there is some other purpose rather than the legal purpose which I was talking about. This purpose is known as one of the salutary purpose of the principles of natural justice. Secondly, in England they refer to the case and says the giving of reasons is one of the fundamentals of good administration. So this again is not the strictly legal purpose, but a salutary purpose. They also refer to the Committee of Ministers of Power, and it says that any party affected by a decision should be informed of the reasons on which the decision is based, and such a decision should be in the form of a reasoned document available to the parties affected. And why that reasoned document is important? A reasoned decision is essential in order that where there is a right of appeal, Remember, where there is a right of appeal, the applicant can assess whether he has good grounds of appeal and know the case he will have to meet if he decides to appeal. So, the ground of reasoned order is that if he has a right of appeal, he can very well make his case. Further building on the same argument, it refers to Harinagar Sugar Mills case, and the important statement is if the central government acts as a tribunal exercising judicial powers, and the exercise of that power is subject to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court under Article 136, we fail to see how the power of this court can be effectively exercised if reasons are not given by the central government. So the power of appeal under Article 136 will become a futility if the court did not know what is the ground of the decision by the central government, which is acting as a tribunal in this case. Further, in Madhya Pradesh industries, some important statements are made, which says that the conditions to give reasons introduces clarity and excludes or at any rate minimizes the arbitrariness. It gives satisfaction to the party against whom the order is made, and it also enables an appellate or supervisory court to keep tribunal within bounds. A reasoned order is a desirable condition of judicial disposal. If tribunal can make orders without giving reasons, the said power in the hands of unscrupulous or dishonest officers may turn to be a potent weapon of abuse of power. But if reasons for an order are given, it will be an effective restraint on such abuse, as the order, if it discloses extraneous or irrelevant considerations, will be subject to judicial scrutiny and correction. So, if the reasons are recorded, then it will give rise to a scrutiny by the process of judicial review or appeal. So, in Raipur Development Authority, they refer to Bhagat Raja case and Siemens Engineering. I have highlighted the relevant portions of those decisions, and it says, but at the same time, it has to be borne in mind that what applies generally to settlement of disputes by authorities governed by public law need not be extended to all cases arising under private law, such as those arising under the law of arbitration, which is intended for settlement of private disputes. So, this principle of natural justice may be restricted in some cases. Therefore, finally, the court in this case says an important consideration which has weighed with the court for holding that an administrative authority exercising quasi judicial functions must record the reasons for its decision is that such a decision is subject to appellate jurisdiction of this court under 136 of the Constitution, as well as supervisory jurisdiction of the High Courts under Article 227 of the Constitution, and that the reason, if recorded, would enable this court or the High Courts to effectively exercise the appellate or the supervisory power. But this is not the sole consideration. Now, remember, in the case of armed forces, this 136 and 227 are not applicable. Therefore, the court is trying to find some other considerations on which a principle of law, of principle of natural justice, can be followed. Therefore, it says, so the other considerations which have also weighed with the court in taking this view are the requirement of recording reasons would, number one, guarantee consideration by the authority, introduce clarity in the decisions, minimize chances of arbitrariness in the decision making. Because they have said that the administrative authorities or the tribunals are different from the courts because they decide the matter on the basis of the policy of the government and the matters of expediency. Now, this pressure of the policy of the government and expediency is not available with the courts. Therefore, it says, in this regard, a distinction has to be drawn between ordinary courts of law and tribunals. So, a judge of the court is uninfluenced by considerations of policy or expediency, but an administrative authority or an executive officer does look at things from the standpoint of policy and expediency. It says, reasons when recorded by administrative authority in order passed by it while exercising quasi judicial functions will no doubt facilitate the exercise of jurisdiction by the appellate or the supervisory authority. So, talking about 136 and 227. But the other considerations, so chances of arbitrariness, clarity in decision making, which have also weighed with this court in holding that administrative authority must record reasons for its decisions, are of no less significance. These considerations show that the recordings of reason by an administrative authority serves a salutary purpose. Remember this salutary purpose, namely, it excludes chances of arbitrariness, it ensures a degree of fairness in the process of decision making. The said purpose would apply equally to all decisions, and its application cannot be confined to decisions which are subject to appeal, revision, or judicial review. So, even if there are no grounds of appeal, revision, or judicial review, these salutary purpose will demand that a reasoned decision has always to be given. Further, it says the need for recording of reasons is greater in a case where the order is passed at the original stage. The appellate of the revisional authority, if it affirms such an order, need not give separate reasons. If the appellate or revisional authority agrees with the reasons contained in the order under the challenge. So there is no requirement of giving reasons if the confirming authority accepts the decisions of the lower authorities. Now, this is also an important point. Please refer to this. While considering this aspect, the Donomore Committee observed that it may well be argued that there is a third principle of natural justice, namely, that a party entitled to know the reasons for the decision, be it judicial or quasi judicial. So, one of the grounds of principle of natural justice. But the question is whether the salutary purpose is always necessary or it may be dispensed with. So, therefore, it says the rules of natural justice are not embodied rules. The extent of their application depends upon a particular statutory framework whereunder jurisdiction has been conferred on the administrative authority. So, what the law is saying is important to be seen before deciding whether the rules of natural justice are to be applicable or not. Such exclusion can also arise. So, the exclusion of the principle of natural justice can also arise by necessary implication from the nature of the subject matter, the scheme, and the provisions of the enactment. The public interest underlying such a provision would outweigh the salutary purpose served by the requirement to record reasons. Therefore, the very first statement which I made, that the public interest underlying the provision would outweigh the salutary purpose served by the requirement to record the reasons. It says, for the reason aforesaid, it must be concluded that except in cases where the requirement has been dispensed with expressly or by necessary implication, and administrative authority exercising judicial or quasi judicial function is required to record reasons for its decision. But it says except in cases where it is expressly prohibited or by necessary implication, it can be said that such a principle of natural justice shall be denied. Therefore, the case then refers to the Army Act and then comes to those conclusions. So, the conclusions I have highlighted, that Rule 66 makes no provision for recommendation to mercy, and Sub Rule 1 prescribes that if the court makes a recommendation of mercy, it shall give reasons for the recommendation. So, in only case where there is a recommendation to mercy, there is a requirement of recording of reasons. Further, it says there is no such requirement Another provision relating to recording of findings and sentence. Rule 66 proceeds on the basis that there is no such requirement because if such a requirement was there, it would not have been necessary to make a specific provision for recording of reasons for the recommendation of mercy. So, when there is an express provision made, then the other thing shall be excluded. The said provision thus negative a requirement to give reasons for its finding and sentence by the court martial, and reasons are required to be recorded only in cases where the court martial makes a recommendation to mercy. Further, section 162, an express provision has been made for recording of reasons based on merit of the case in cases where the said proceedings are set aside or sentence is reduced and no other requirement of recording of reasons is laid down either in the act or the rules in the respect of proceedings for confirmation. Therefore, 162 thus negatives a requirement to give reasons on the part of the confirming authority while confirming the findings and sentence of the court martial. So, the court martial is a lower authority, then there is a confirming authority. If the confirming authority accepts the decisions of the court martial, then there is no reason to be recorded. But only when the sentence is reduced or the decision of the court martial is set aside, there is a requirement of recording of reasons. Finally, the court says since reasons are not required to be recorded at the first two stages referred to above, the requirement cannot, in our opinion, be insisted upon the stage of consideration of post confirmation petition under section 162 of the Act. For the reasons aforesaid, it must be held that reasons are not required to be recorded for an order passed by the confirming authority confirming the findings and sentence recorded by the court martial, as well as for the order passed by the central government dismissing the post confirmation proceedings. But the court says finally that that is not the end of the matter. They still have the protection of Article 32 and Article 226, and there is a ground for appropriate relief in case of the armed forces, and hence finally decides on the basis of those powers of review.